Okay. So I was saying that we are still looking at the accounting errors, right? Yeah. So last time we communicated to you that the errors are broken down into the errors that can affect the agreement of the trial balance and those that don't affect the agreement of the trial balance. It is, and it would actually interest you to learn that the errors that do not affect the agreement of the trial balance are corrected using the journals. So you can do the journal entries, and that we showed you how to do it. Then we said the errors that affect the agreement, okay, they are corrected using the suspense account. I repeat, the errors that do not affect the agreement of the trial balance are corrected using the journal entries, whereas these that affect, they are corrected using the suspense account. And so basically what you just need to learn is how to handle the issue of the suspense account. What do you actually do with the suspense account? Because if you do not treat the suspense account very well, then you will always be in trouble. So what I just want to expose you to, in addition of the conversation we had previously, is to show you how we do the entries in the suspense account, or how we treat the suspense account one more time. Okay, one more time we conversate on the suspense account. Okay, now what is a suspense account, right? What is a suspense account? As we wind up this topic, we are saying that a suspense account, it is an account where you record the transactions, okay, temporarily. So the transactions are recorded temporarily. That is to say, you don't record the transactions permanently in the suspense account. Now, let me show you what happens. So look at the errors. There are some errors that affect the trial, the agreement of the trial balance. Okay, you find that the credit side and the debit side of the trial balance are not balancing, right? They are not equal. You find that they are not equal. Okay, because they are not equal, you understand that there is a difference between the two the two accounts. There is this difference between the two accounts. And it is that difference that we need to get and put somewhere in the suspense account as we are trying to follow up with our books, consulting from our books where the error might have occurred from. So generally, we are interested in knowing what has really led to all this, okay? What could have led to this? Where could the error have come from? And this is actually very important. You need this. You need to understand. So that difference, we are keeping this record or this figure temporarily somewhere as we are trying to follow up, right? To follow up with our books, the books of original entry, to check what could have transpired. So that's how a suspense account does actually work. So now, let me show you what happens. Just a minute or less. Okay. At least we have extracted the board. We at least show you the records from the whiteboard, which can be easier. Yeah. Right now, I just want to confirm from you if you are able to see the screen. Yeah. Wait a bit. Where is this? Okay, are you able to see the screen and the figure and what is written? Yeah. All right, thank you. Let's continue now. Question number 3 and the example number 3 is reading. The trial balance at 31st December, okay, 2017 showed a difference of 77 pounds. Now, being a shortage on the debit side, get this cleared. So you go to the trial balance, you look at the trial balance, okay? As you look at this trial balance, you see that there is a difference actually. There is a shortage on the debit side by the amount 77 pounds. Now, what you do, you open a suspense account and then the difference of 77 is entered on the debit side of the account. Where the difference is, that's where you enter. Okay. For example, if you find that there is a shortage on the credit side, it means you enter the difference on the credit side of the suspense account. Just show you. So when you open the suspense account, if you learn that the difference was on the right side of the account, that is on the credit, then you have to record it on the credit. If you learn that it was on the debit, you have to record it on the debit side. So let me just read out this one. Now, on 28 February 2018, all the errors from the previous year were found. Okay, they discovered the errors that it could have led to the what? To this difference. Is that okay? They discovered the errors that could actually have led to these differences. Right. So now, number 1, there was a check of 150 that was paid to Kent that had been correctly entered in the cash book but had not been entered in Kent's account. So this is the error that they discovered, number 1. There was a check that was paid to someone. If you pay a check, it means you credit the cash book, isn't it? That's what we agreed, that when you are recording in the cash book, if you pay a check, you issue a check, you have to credit the cash book. So the business credited the account, the cash book, but the receiving side, that is the person who was receiving, the receiving account, which is the personal account in this question, never received any entry. Like they never recorded anyway. So you have to correct this error as well. Then again, there was a purchase. Okay, the purchases account that had been undercast by 20. The purchases account had been undercast by 20. And there was a check of 93 received from Sandy that had been correctly entered in the cash book, but had not been entered in Sandy's account. Okay. Now, what do you do? What do you do? So you have to record, number 1, the double entries for the suspense accounts, and then you create the suspense account, like make the journal entries. Yeah, make the double entries, okay, for these transactions. And after making the double entry for the transactions, that's the first thing that we're going to do. And it is the easiest way to deal with a suspense account. Open the journal entries for each of the transaction. Then afterwards, you can easily draw up the what? The trial balance. Let's open the journal entry. To open the journal entry, in short, we are just trying to say we need to have the account that is being debited and the account that is being what? Credited. This is very important. Get to learn which account is being debited, which account is being what? Credited. So we open the journal entries. Which account are you debiting? Dr. Credit. Let's go back to transaction number A. Aisha, would you read A? Part A? That's error number A.
A check of £150 paid to L. Kent had been correctly entered in the cash book, but had not been entered in Kent's account.
Thank you for the powerful reading. So now, there was a check that was paid to someone, meaning someone received a what? A check. But this had been correctly entered in our what? In our cash book, but it had not been entered in their account. So let's start with we are told of Kenty's account that never received any entries. Okay. So we have Kenty's account. So if Kenty's account never received, how do we correct the error? Do we debit or credit Kent? Hash, what do you think? Hello? Mr. Hash, what do you think? All right, Zahir, what do you think? All right, guys, turn on your mic and speak. What do you think we can do here? Do you debit the Kent's account or you credit it? That's a question.
Debit. Debit. Debit, sir.
All right. So you debit Kenty's account with the unknown account, isn't it? We don't know the account. Yeah. We debit Kenty's account, okay, with the account that we don't know. Because he received, he received, but the name of the account, like where they received it from, we don't know it, isn't it? We just thought that this transaction was entered in the cash book. But the question is that who gave, like, of course, in the account, in the cash book, we just record all the cash transactions from different accounts, right? So the question is, who gave? If Kenty's account received, who issued the check? We don't know. So we have to use the suspense account. So we debit what? We debit Kenty's account. Debit Kenty's account. Okay. And then credit the suspense account. Yes, by 1/5. You debit Kenty's account and then you credit the suspense account. This is just the simple journal entry. If you want to do the T account, you can do the T accounts like this. For Kent, you can write Kenty's account. You know how we open the journal entries. You are debiting. So this was 2018. Suspense account is the one that gave to Kent 1/5. Just like that, if you want to do the T account for the same, it's very easy. It's still one and the same thing, right? Kenty's account is receiving. We're finishing the double entry. Kent's account is receiving how much from which account, okay? That is very important. Hello? All right. If you don't have any question, we can move on to the other part of the question. We have shown you the journal entries for this one. Then we have B. That Paul should read. Read B.
The purchaser's account had been undercast by £20.
Thank you. So the purchaser's account had been undercast by what? By 20. Okay. The purchaser's account had been undercast by 20. So now, when you look at the purchaser's account, right? The purchaser's account sits where? Let me show you where it sits. The purchaser's account has got the debit entry, isn't it? Like when you're purchasing goods, you debit the purchases. These are goods into the business, right? So the purchaser's account, has got the debit entry. It's usually on the debit side, okay, of the what? Of the trial balance. Because these purchases are the ones that you keep as inventories, isn't it? You keep them. And these are assets, you debit assets. So what do? You know that the assets sit on the debit side. Okay. So it is said that it was below by what? By 20. It was down. The debit side was below. That's what it means to be undercast. It was below by 20. So what do? You have to add a 20 again on the same side. So since the purchases account is on the debit side, you will have to debit again the purchases account, isn't it? Debit the purchases account again by 20, which was missing. So you debit the purchases account by what? By 20. And the details that you use is the suspense account. Okay? Because you are debiting it from which account? You don't know, right? You just know that it was undercast by 20, but the other account, the corresponding account, is what you don't know. So what you do is that you do what? You have to debit the purchases account, okay? Debit the purchases account with 20. Of course, this 20 is from the suspense account because we are not aware. We are not aware, okay? Is that clear? If you want, the journal entries can still be written like this. Which account are you debiting? The purchases account, right? By 20. And then which account are you crediting? The suspense account is being credited by 20. Is that clear? Hello? You guys are able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So now, maybe a little bit of some addition so that you may be understanding what we mean, okay, by having a debit entry or credit entry. What this means is that, number one, I'm hoping that you've already written. Let me just remind you the items that are credited and those that are debited on the trial balance. Right. Let's have the assets that are debited. What assets do you debit on the trial balance? Number one, you debit all the assets. Is that clear? You debit all the losses. Okay? You debit all the expenses. Is that clear? This is on the trial balance. So like all the accounts that pertain to assets, which are the real accounts, and the other nominal accounts that we have that pertain to losses and the expenses, all the expenses, they sit on the debit side of the trial balance. So now listen carefully. When you have an account, for example, you have purchases, you have inventory, right? Or you have cash being undercast, the cash account being undercast. What that means is that if the cash account is being undercast, the cash account is an asset. Cash is an asset. It sits on the debit side. So it means that the debit side of the what? Of the trial balance is down by what? By 20 or by that amount. So you have to, if it's an undercast, you have to lift up the same side by debiting the same side. So the transaction will be on the same debit side. Is that clear? But if it were an overcast, get this point. If it were an overcast, okay, you could have recorded on the opposite side. You didn't get this one. I repeat. Let's pick an example of a cash account. Let's say a cash account, which is an asset account, right? Is now overcast, not undercast, all right? If it's overcast, let's say by 200, what you will do, you will credit, okay? You will have to credit the account, the cash account, right? You have to credit the cash account. Why are you crediting now? So that you can have the opposite entry that you will cancel with this other account. Okay, with this amount that has been overcast. When the account has been overcast, you have to deduct some money from it, isn't it? So how do you deduct? You just record the same amount on the opposite side. It will cancel out. Don't have to strike like this, the way how I've stricken. But basically what you have to do is just to, record on the opposite side. Get this one very clearly, okay? So if you hear that this account was overcast, the first question to ask yourself is that, which side of the trial balance does this account sit, okay? Is it sitting on the debit side of the trial balance or on the credit side? Now, what should be there to guide you whether the account sits on the debit side or on the credit side is what I've just written. Check, is the account an assets account, okay? Is that an asset? For example, cash, fixtures, buildings, whatsoever, all those assets that inventories, receivables. Check. If that is an assets account, then you have to debit. Check, is it an account pertaining to the losses? Is it an account pertaining to the expenses? For example, rent account was it? Let's say rent account was the undercast. Rent account, we know that rent is an expense, so it's on the debit side. So if you hear that it was undercast, you just have to record on the same debit side. You debit the same account again because you are lifting up the debit side, okay, of the same account, because it means that if the account is undercast, the same side of that account is of the trial balance, of course, is below. Okay, the same side of the trial balance is below by that amount. But if it's an overcast, it is higher by that particular amount. So you do an opposite entry. Now, what elements are always, credited? We credit all the incomes, right? If you don't want to say incomes, you can say the gains. All the gains, or the incomes, all the revenue, or sales if you want, right? Sales is credited. All the liabilities, Write down this. This is very important. And the O capital. These are the elements that are credited on the trial balance as well. Incomes, revenues, liabilities, and capital. And because these accounts are credited, what you need to do, you as a very good accountant, when you read the question, identify what type of an account it is, okay? Is it an assets account? Is this a losses? Is it an expense account? Is it an incomes account? For example, income received account, commission received, discount received. Those are incomes or a received account or the gains. So you know that those are credited, okay? Revenues are basically sales. You know that they are always credited. All the liabilities, check, is that a liabilities account? If it's a liabilities account, you have to, you know that it sits where? It sits on the credit side. Now, get it clear. If you hear that a liabilities account, any account that falls under liability, for example, payables account is a liability. If you hear that that account was overcast, it means that the credit, since the liabilities sit on the credit side of the trial balance, the credit side of the trial balance is higher by that amount. So what do you do to deduct? Record on the opposite side, which is on the debit side. Is that clear now? Do I have any question from anyone? Anybody needing clarity? Oh. If there is no one, at least you have understood what we are doing. Let's continue. So like, for example, the purchases account had been undercast. You know that the purchases account has got the debit entry, okay? Because you have these inventories that you just keep. These codes that you have to keep. So now, since you have this account, this amount, what you have to do is an undercast. You have to record on the same side. Now, there was a check of 93 that was received from Sandy. It was received by who? We don't know. You get? We received a check by Sandy that had been correctly entered in the cash, but had not been entered in Sandy's account. So in short, Sandy's account gave a check, right? So to correct the error, Sandy's account is credited, right? Sandy's account is what? Is being credited. Sandy account, is being credited. Why are you crediting? Because he issued a check. Now he was wishing to each account. We don't know. That's why we put a suspense account. Okay. He issued a check of 93, right? It's what we don't know. 93 like that. So on the credit side, if you want to show this same entry in the suspense account, it's very easy because you just have to do the opposite entry. So the suspense account, if the Sandy's account is credited, then the suspense account will be debited by what? By the same Sandy's account, the same amount, 93. That's the idea behind the journal entries. So now let's come up with a trial with a suspense account, like generate the suspense account. Okay. Now, when we are coming up with the suspense account, we are picking all the accounts that were debited, okay, and those that were credited. We are just focusing on the suspense account now. In each transaction, you ask yourself, what happened to the suspense account? Was it debited and was it credited? Debit and credit. So it's very easy. Since you have already done your journal entries, it's very easy now. The first account, in the first transaction, a check of 150 paid to L. Kent had been correctly entered. But the first thing that you have to do is to record this difference in the balance, okay? The difference of 77 as the balance brought down at the beginning of the period. It's a debit balance. Balance brought down 77. That's how you open the suspense account. Start with the given balance. Then now go to the transactions. You are told that there was a check of 150 that was paid to Kent that had not been entered in Kenty's account. In short, Kenty's account received here, the suspense account was what? Was credited. So what do? You credit the suspense account this time around with Kent. Okay. So it means that the suspense account will be credited with Kent, and the amount is 150. Simple. Then you go to the next transaction. During the purchases account, it had been undercast by 20. So we debited the purchase. So the suspense account will be credited by the purchases of 20. So you record the purchases 20 like that. And then where else? We transaction number C, we said that Sandy gave, right? His account gave some check. He issued a check. In short, Sandy is supposed to be credited, then you debit the suspense account. So the suspense account will be debited with Sandy. Very easy. Sandy is account 93. Then when you reach here, it's very simple. You balance off the account. Can we balance off the account? Add on the credit side. What do you have? You have 170. What is 197.9? This is what? Oh, this is 0. Remember 1. 7 plus 9, that will be 16. 170. Even here, 170. Have you seen? It's balancing both sides. Ideally, if you have done the correct thing, the suspense account closes itself. Okay? It balances. Is that clear? Hello? So the suspense account does close itself. It closes itself. All right.